So hi again, this is Miss Hayes here to talk to you some more about literature. This time we're going to talk about moral value, what it is when we're talking about literature and how to explain it to other people. So let's start off with what moral value is in literature. So basically it's what the text teaches us to help us live better lives. Now better can mean safer or freer, which can be opposites, right? Safe can mean maybe a little bit less free. Free can mean a little bit less safe. So it depends on how you define better, and that's going to be subjective. Better can be more ecologically sustainable, more loving, and it's going to depend on what topics or themes that the text is focused on. Some stories, poems, movies, songs are going to be more focused on relationships, right? And so maybe the theme there will be love, although it could be different kinds of love: romantic, friendly, sacred, familial. So you want to really think about what themes or real life topics the work is calling your attention to. But then once you've done that, I want you to keep in mind that literature often, not all the times, but very often, is trying to send some sort of message about that theme or ask some kind of question about how best to live our lives in that specific area. For example, a love poem might be trying to send a message about what love means or how to love people well. Or it could be just asking a question, getting us, the readers, to question what love is and what loving people well actually looks like. So keeping in mind that there's going to be a theme or a topic, but then often a message or a question, let's talk about what a thematic message is. So this is what the author thinks about a specific topic. I'm going to stress again, this is the author, not you, not what you wish the author was saying or what you think is right, but what the author seems to be saying through the work. It's going to be a debatable statement. It's going to be a statement about the topic that people can disagree on. And that statement could be directly stated through the mouth of a character or through the narrator of a story, the speaker of a poem. It could be even in the title of the work. But that doesn't happen that often in good literature because good literature is trying to engage us and get us to think about things a little bit more. So even if the author is taking a stance and telling what they think about the topic, the message might be implied. It might be implied through the events that happen, especially the endings. So for example, if we have one character who thinks that love is unconditional and another character who thinks that love is conditional, well, if the character, whichever character has the happier ending is probably the one that the author is trying to show us is right. So here's an example. An author could be trying to send the message that it's safe and easier to fit in with the crowd. That message could be stated directly by a character, the speaker, or the narrator, or it could be implied because the character who fits in with the crowd has the better outcome in the end, the happier life. But on the flip side, another author who's writing about the same topic, but a different story, a different poem, a different song, could be trying to send the message that you need to be true to yourself, even if it's inconvenient or perhaps unsafe. Both of those thematic messages are completely doable, plausible. It just depends on what the author wants to say. But notice they both have the same theme or topic of fitting in and whether or not to fit in based on safety or convenience. Now, on the other hand, some authors might have a thematic question instead of a thematic message. Now, in this case, the author isn't trying to convince you or persuade you to think anything. They're inviting you, the audience, to take your own stance. So the question is going to be opening a door to you to decide for yourself what you think is right or best about the topic. And again, the question can be directly stated by anyone within the work of literature. It can be implied, especially if there are equally strong arguments on both sides. So to go back to my previous example that was not on the screen about two characters, one who thinks that love is conditional and the other who thinks that love is not conditional, if they both end up with pretty happy, good lives, things turn out well for them both in the end, then they're kind of equal. And so it's going to leave it up to you to decide, well, if it works out good either way, what do you think is best? And also, of course, the flip side can be true as well, right? If both of those characters end up with pretty miserable outcomes in the story or in the poem or in the song, then it's still equal, just in a bad way. And it's up to you to decide what you think is best. Going back to our previous example where the theme was fitting in or not fitting in, an author might be trying to pose a question like, well, what should you do if you don't fit in with a new environment or group of people? Be yourself or more like everyone else? And again, that could be a question that someone literally asks in the work of literature, or could be a question that comes up in your head as you see what's happening. Why does this matter? I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory to you, but I'm going to start on the left and work to the right. So part of the reason why moral value matters is because we all need guidance. We're all trying to figure out how to do this thing called life. And yes, we have, family and friends and teachers, role models of all different kinds. And literature provides just another avenue to think about situations that we might face in life before we go through them instead of after. Another reason why this matters in literature, if we go to the middle box, is because fiction, poetry, and other forms of literature can be more potent and more powerful than speeches. How many of us really pay attention to what our politicians say, right? Or sometimes, let's be honest, even to parents, older family members, sometimes it takes engaging the imagination, especially if it has artistic merit, like we discussed in a previous video, really getting drawn into a situation to get an understanding and to really think about the best choices to make in a situation. And then last but not least, moral value in literature matters not only because it can give us a little bit of guidance and in a way that hits us in the heart instead of just in the head, but also because higher moral value in literature, these stories that are passed down through generations and generations, especially in the canonized works, can not only improve your individual life and the decisions that you make, it can improve society, right? The original stories, the epics like of Homer, the Odyssey, and things like that, those stories were passed down not just to distract from life and to be good entertainment, but also to educate people and try to shape people's morals. So as we're thinking about what works we enjoy and what works we're learning from, and we make recommendations to others, we also want to think about what should we be holding up on a pedestal? What works of literature are asking the questions we need to ask or teaching us how we need to be in life in our times? Now, as you try to explain to other people, okay, this work of literature is really good, it has high moral value in these ways or in these parts, here's what you'll need to have in your notes to explain it clearly. First things first, you'll need the message or the question. Notice that's or, it's probably not going to be both. And that's going to be what you got out of the work of literature. The message that you got might be different than the message that someone else got. That's fine as long as you can explain which parts of the literature help send that message to you. Then you're going to need some evidence or the parts of the text that led you to that message or conclusion. So what I was just saying, explaining, I think they're saying fit in with the crowd. Which parts of the work make you say that? So notice I've got an asterisk here. That means you're going to need to be able to cite which parts of the literature or of the text helped you reach that message or that question that you got out of the work. So you can have quotes, you can summarize different events that happened in the work, you can describe some characters, you can list some techniques that the authors gave that help send the message that you got or ask the question that you found yourself asking. But then last but not least, you need to be able to explain why that message or that question is useful or needed in the world today. That's going to be the personal or the cultural relevance. And you see I have an asterisk there because you're probably going to need to cite that too. I don't have it in the example on the screen simply because there's no room on the screen, But if you can say, we need to know what love is and what love isn't because so many people are getting divorced, or there's so much domestic violence, or there's so much whatever that relates to love, that helps show that yes, we do need to be thinking about this in these days and times. So here's a quick example. Like I said, it doesn't have the citations for the usefulness or the need for the lesson or the question, but it gives you a good starting point. So for example, again, circling back to the story, A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor, this is a student saying that the ending of A Good Man is Hard to Find made me realize that any form of judging others is bad, because both the misfit, that's the serial killer who kills the family at the end of the story, spoiler alert, and the grandmother who gets killed, spoiler alert, were judgmental and hurt people. This message against judgment is necessary because political, social, and generational judgment are increasingly dividing Americans and leading to harm. Now, of course, again, you want to actually get some data, some numbers, some evidence that political, social, and generational judgment are increasingly dividing Americans and leading to harm, but I just couldn't fit it on the screen. But otherwise, notice all three of the parts are here. We have the message or the question that the student got out of the story. What's that message? Any form of judging others is bad. We have the parts of the text that led to that message or conclusion. And notice how briefly they're summarized. The student says both the misfit and the grandmother were judgmental and hurt people. Now, if you've read the story, you have an idea of where that happened, but it's kind of summarizing the whole thing. Then we have the use or the need. We need this message against judgment because, and I've already said it, so I won't say it too many more times. But those are the things you need to have in your notes, right? Probably you're not going to be able to explain moral value until you're finished reading the whole work of literature and probably rereading it a couple of times. Now, you probably have a question in your head. What do I do if I feel like there is not moral value? Like there's no message or no question? Then explain how it's just trying to entertain and which parts make you say it's not trying to tell us the best way to live our lives. Or let's say you feel like there is a message, but that message isn't needed. Explain why it's not needed. Let's say you feel like there's a question, but that question is irrelevant in today's times. Explain, probably using outside research and citations, what makes that question not relevant to today's world. Now, if you have any questions about moral value or any comments about this video, go ahead and put them below. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.